Robocop, Sin City, Ronin, Daredevil, The Dark Knight Returns, hit after hit, Frank Miller is a man who knows stories. He knows what makes stories work, and he knows his audience. His stories have entertained audiences for years in different formats. From comic books to movies, he does not just narrate stories for the sake of it, he uses it as a way to critique and comment on our society. I was utterly delighted to find a 3-issue comic book of Frank Miller with art from Geof Darrow that is highly underrated. If you know about Hard Boiled, congratulations! Your taste in comic books is pristine. Now let me tell you all about this comic book and why I liked it so much. Just another day in the future. A man in a white coat hurries along a passageway, and it's clear from his face that he is stressed about something. He constantly mutters, "Oh boy, oh brother," as he meets 2 security men. The men, who are armed to the ninths, like they have guns and pistols strapped to their helmet and shoulders, inform Barbara, a robot assistant, that Norman is here to meet Mr. Williford in an emergency. So we know that this scientist guy is Norman. He looks like a Norman too. The men let Norman inside with instructions not to touch anything. The robotic assistant, who has a snatched waist and only wears a pair of mom jeans, lets him inside and asks what the problem was that got him sweating buckets. Norman tells her that Unit 4 had been overdoing it again at the pleasure center. He cuts to Unit 4, a man whose left half is on fire, is covered in what I assume to be blood, and his upper right half is covered in shards of glass. He is a complete wreck. Behind him, 2 men have died from bullet wounds, and in front of him, multiple cars have collided with their mechanical innards spilling out. He eggs on the man in front of him, who is in a yellow car, and tells him that he has 3 more bullets left. The car whirs into motion and drives through a wall with him stuck to the hood. The wall gives way, and Unit 4, along with the car, crashes down into what Norman described as the pleasure center. A public area with a stage a bit bigger than a boxing ring, where everyone is naked and having pleasure is not the only thing happening on stage, as 2 women walk around with chainsaws, hacking limbs off the performers. They are surrounded by an audience, some dressed, some not, who are all blissfully unaware of the car dropping from above. The car knocks straight into the stage, and the performers are thrown in the air, while the chain link fence around the stage wraps around Norman. The driver dead in the driving seat, the car turns on automatic destruction and begins a countdown to detonate. Despite being covered in glass shards and now a chain link fence with fingers bent out of shape, Unit 4 declares himself as Nixon, a tax collector. Norman reports everything to his boss, Mr. Williford, a morbidly obese man who is being washed by 2 mechanical mermaids. Above him, there is a machine that delivers soda, french fries, and chocolate bars to him directly. Norman tells him that though there is no body count yet, it is sure to be in the 3 digits, and the cleanup crew has been sent out. He also mentions that the repair team retrieved him, and the police commissioner has been paid, no doubt for his silence. Back at the scene, 2 scientists tackle Nixon and put a mechanical tube inside his mouth. A scientist assures that he is going to be alright and gets him to settle down. They load him up in an ambulance, and the doctor gives him a shot that makes his eye water. If you have not caught up yet, Unit 4, or Nixon here, is a cyborg belonging to Mr. Williford. A giveaway for me was that the doctor does not wear any gloves or mask while sneezing, but continues to treat Nixon. He is wheeled into Williford Home Appliances, where doctors begin treating him. They all mask up now, and one of the doctors throws a dirty glare at a man giggling and smoking inside the operation theater. The main doc mentions that they are gonna be there all night because of his state and begin the procedure. A bizarre part of the procedure, which they did not explain later either, was that one of the machines used to treat Nixon had a circular chamber with chocolate bars and babies. Guess you are allowed to theorize about that. The docs replace his skin and reboot him. Nixon suddenly wakes up in a bed with a woman next to him and 2 kids standing by the foot of his bed. The woman tells the kids to return to bed as their father just had a bad dream. The young boy comments on his dad's yell, while the young girl figures it must be her mother's cooking that gave her father a bad dream, as her home ec teacher Mrs. Wilson claimed food was the reason behind bad dreams. The boy asks whether he saw monsters in his dream, and Nixon rubs his head to say no and asks him to go to bed. Though Nixon lies back down, he cannot sleep. He is plagued by dreams of him attacking people with guns and grenades and killing them. The woman next to him notices him tossing and turning and begins to undress. She begins to make love to him, which Nixon embraces despite being reluctant at first. His kids, who are still at the door, watch on, and the boy whispers something in the girl's ear. Even during moments of pleasure, Nixon remembers the doctors surrounding him and wires connected all over his body. The girl pulls out an injection and the boy declares that there will be no more bad dreams. The kids tie a tourniquet around his arm and inject something. Nixon gets worried, but his wife soothes him, telling him that everything will be alright. Nixon gets dreams again, but this time they are abstract. He remembers a war and being in a graveyard in front of a grave with no name on it. Suddenly the alarm rings and he wakes up with a kiss from his wife. As he leaves his home, he begins monologue. He tells no one in particular that his wife Becky gives him flapjacks and burgers every day, and though some people might complain about a lack of variety, he never had reason to. He continues, speaking about how he likes familiar things like driving his car, watching his kids grow up, seeing the same neighbors just as familiar as his name, Carl Seltz. He tells us he is an insurance investigator. Back at Williford's residence, Norman tells Barbara that everything worked out all right, as the support system did their job. He complains about how hard it is to turn off those units, and immediately adds, "No offense," remembering he is talking to a robot. I will be honest, I had not caught up on the fact that Nixon was a cyborg till the last panel of the first issue. So the kids watching their parents and then climbing onto the bed unfazed to inject Nixon was shocking. Apparently people at the time of the comic book's release did not have that issue, as it was marketed as, quote-unquote, a reality through the eyes of a psychotic cyborg. A heads up to modern readers would have been nice. A friend or a foe? Unlike people who read it at the time of release, I don't have to wait for the next issue. It continues on with Nixon, who is Carl now, monologuing about his life. He says that though people say romance goes out of a marriage once you have kids, for him, Becky has never looked better. He could close his eyes if he needed to see Becky, but since he was driving, he would not do so. He drives his T-Bird really well, and he wonders why he stopped for burgers before work, even though he had been pretty full from dinner. By this time, his car begins to report a vehicle dangerously close and demands acceleration. A realization seems to set in for Carl as he remembers he never liked burgers and he was driving a wagon, not a T-Bird, whose production was stopped years ago. He was in a Ford Stallone, which was equipped with a defense system that could stop a tank. He then reminds himself that he is Harry Burns, an insurance investigator with one wife, 2 kids, and 3 mortgages on a 2-bedroom in Burbank. Man, I would detonate myself if I was a cyborg but still had to pay mortgage. Right in front of him, an old woman sips from a cola and in her passenger seat is a kid. They had been trying to get a hold of Nixon and were now successful because of a tip from Barbara. The sound of a police vehicle, which is enormous by the way, alerts Nixon and he releases spikes from his car that puncture the police vehicle and send it crashing into other cars. As he drives away, the old woman changes her car's direction and drives straight into him. The 2 cars collide and drop off the bridge down several feet. Nuts, bolts, and a license plate get lodged into Nixon's body, but he stands up without hesitation and demands papers of disclosure from the woman for filing a false claim against his company, Benevolent Assurance Corporation. The woman grabs the kid and begins shooting at Nixon. The bullets knock him off his feet, but he gets up once more and the old woman comments that he's pretty tough. She slyly adds whether he knows why. Nixon insists he is not Nixon as he is Carl Burns from Burbank. He remembers his wife screaming his name passionately. The girl in the woman's arms tells him she is scared and asks for his help. Nixon is in pretty bad shape, his joints blown out, but he carries forward as little girls should not die and should be given any flavor of ice cream they want. The girl tells him that her name is Christy and that she is a good girl. The old woman comments that the girl's overdoing it and shoots Nixon one more time. This time Nixon stays down, unable to get up, but still shoots the old woman's knees. She crashes down on a line of bikes and drops the girl. Nixon crawls over towards the girl, telling her that everything will be alright. The bikers, whose bike the old woman landed on, pull out gear chains to beat her with, but they don't know that they are not dealing with a frail grandma. She gets up and uppercuts a man so hard his head pops off his body. She then puts her thumbs inside the eyes of his friend. The woman then turns to Nixon, showing out the cybernetic eye that has popped out of her face, and asks if he's caught on yet. Nixon, ever the dullard, reiterates that his name is Burns and shoots her again. The woman tells him that they always lie, but Nixon is not ready to listen. He shoots the gas tank of a bike and leaves the explosion with Christie. Cops begin to arrive and Nixon kills a cop to steal his car. He gives Christie his gun and begins to drive the hell out of there. He is not free from the old woman though, as she was holding on to the car's bumper beam. She then climbs up onto the top and punches a hole into the car's roof. As she holds onto Nixon's face to pull him out, Nixon asks Christie for his gun, but Christie has completely dismantled it. He ends up crashing the car into a bus. Nixon and the old woman begin a fierce fistfight, not giving any attention to the cops surrounding them. In a last-ditch effort, Nixon jams an open grenade into her stomach that launches him out like a rocket. He thinks that at least Christie is okay, but the woman calls him an idiot for that. As he flies up and down a parabola, he repeats the facts of his life again. Seltz, tax collector, Burbank, 2 kids, and white. If he had even 1 ounce of intelligence, he would have noticed that his name changed thrice and his profession changed twice. Nixon crashes into a supermarket where people buy giant grocery. When I say giant, it's not an exaggeration. These people are really out here buying 3-foot-long sodas and grapes the size of a golf ball. In Williford Home Appliance, Norman shows up again, covered in sweat, asking Barbara to let him see Mr. Williford again. He tells her that Unit 2 had intercepted Unit 4. Barbara asks him to call Unit 2 Blanche, as she likes that name, and pulls Norman's head out of his body as she could not let him inform Mr. Williford about the trouble Nixon was in. She comments how she hates flesh as she fixes a weak nut in her wrist. The crash had burnt the skin off of Nixon's face and arms, causing him to rethink whether he was just another normal guy. His main cause of concern was his family though, as he could not go home looking the way he did. Nixon's decision. At Nixon's house, a fire hydrant relieves the dogs and orders them to head to base for recharging. The kids ask their mother if she received any word from Central, as Nixon was late. The news reports a robot killing over 500 people, while the boy says that if Nixon's lost it, there would be hell to pay. Barbara gets rid of Norman's body by flushing him down the toilet. Have to say, I am impressed by their water pressure. Another man, Marvin, enters the restroom and tells Barbara about the problem with Unit 4, not noticing that she is surrounded by blood. In Hollywood, Nixon tries to pet a dog and figures he must be looking like a fright when it runs away from him. He decides to fix himself up before going home when the old woman, or Blanche as Barbara mentioned, tells him that he has no home. She strips off her outer covering to show that she is a robot and tells him that he can beat the program like she did. Nixon is shocked to see her true form, but he insists he is Seltz the tax collector and that he didn't mind giving her a fight if she wanted one. Blanche tells him that he is an assassin created to take out the competitors of Williford Home Appliances. She adds that he was only created 3 months ago and was made to think he was a human, as it was easy for his creators to control him. Nixon tells her that he is 35 years old with a wife who was waiting up late for him. Blanche doesn't listen as she begins gyrating against him and tells him that they have parts to make love. Blanche saw a potential partner in Nixon as she had lost all interest in humans after finding out she was a robot. Nixon refuses to believe her despite all of the evidence in front of him and insists that he is a regular guy who just needs to get patched up. She continues touching up on him while telling him that he has been fed memories from dead men, but she can give him something real, pleasure. Nixon has had enough of Blanche's words and touches, so he punches her while she continues telling him that together they could punish the humans that led to her position and live happily somewhere. He doesn't stop punching till all her wires are severed and her head topples down. Christie picks up the head mournfully and tells him that they were all going to get turned off, as he didn't listen to Blanche, who was only trying to help. A dog witnessing the interaction comments that Christie is just a malfunctioning piece of equipment before shooting a laser out of its eyes to take her out. The dog then follows Nixon, who tells himself that he would be fine again after a good night's sleep. Marvin receives footage from the dog and reports to Mr. Williford that Unit 4 had taken out Unit 2. Though Marvin is happy about it, Williford does not seem to have heard it, as he watches something on the huge screen overhead with keyed up naked women Nixon prancing all over him. Marvin continues that it was a good sign, and even more promising was his next stop at the clothing store to dress himself up normally before heading home. Outside the room, Barbara listens to it sadly. On his way home, Nixon breaks the hands of two people who were thrusting their crosses at him and gets on the subway. In there, a man tries to shoot him for wearing a non-American t-shirt, but Nixon plucks his arm out of its socket and stuffs it into his stomach. Marvin tells Williford that Nixon's self-correcting memory would make sure he didn't remember killing them, and the passengers had signed a standard NDA so they need not worry about the minor kills. Nixon can't help but wonder if the robot woman was right about him. As he pulls up his sleeve, he sees Williford and wonders what that is. The dog that had been following him calls him a schmuck for not recognizing that it was his brand name. Nixon asks the dog where to find them, and the dog asks him to follow him. Barbara's quiet reading time is suddenly interrupted by a loud crash. As Barbara walks out, she sees a trail of human bodies, one gorier than the next, and realizes that Nixon is back. She asks him to keep fighting as he is their only hope. She follows the trail down a large hall filled with corpses and into Williford's room. Nixon screams uncle as the machine there had grabbed a hold of him and was picking apart his parts one by one. He tells Williford, who is enjoying the Torture Nixon show with 3 colas fed to him by a mechanical hand, to put him back as he was, and regrets not realizing sooner that the people who built him could take him apart too. Marvin notes that he needs to be reformatted. Seeing this bitter defeat, Barbara walks out of the room and shocks herself till all her circuits are fried. Moments later, Nixon's wife answers the door, admitting she was worried, and asks if Nixon had a bad day at the office. Without a scratch on his perfect skin, Nixon tells her that everything was fine. They lock the 4 locks on their door and share a passionate kiss that lifts Becky off her feet. I absolutely love this story. There have been so many stories that explore what it means to be a human from the eyes of a robot, but this story sums it up so succinctly. It is all about having and coming home to the people you love. Nixon could have liberated his kind and went on to rule the world, but all he wanted was his wife and 2 kids. I also loved scenes with Christie in them, especially when Nixon looks over and sees his gun dismantled in her lap. I rarely laugh out loud at comics, but this one panel got me. Coming to the social commentary side of things, excess is a major theme in the series. The roads are filled with way too many cars, the population has exploded, and every panel is overflowing with stuff. The dystopia Miller writes about is filled with reckless consumerism, and the way current society is going, I would not be surprised if it is our reality one day. The obsession with and violence and their use as a distraction has also been shown so well. It definitely emulates the capitalist dystopia familiarized by Judge Dredd, Terminator, Blade Runner, and Robocop. Many people criticize the work for its graphic violence and nudity, but it's Frank Miller. What were you expecting? Anyway, what did you think of Frank Miller's Hard Boiled? Let me know in the comments below, and if you liked the video, like, share, and subscribe, and ring that bell. I'll soon be back with more awesome comics, but until then, goodbye!